So am I introing you, baby? You ready to kick off?
I'm ready. Question is, are you ready?
I am ready to be sitting by this beautiful woman, my favorite person in the world, Kimberly. She's the co-host of the Kick-Ass Couples podcast with me and an occasional guest on our live nooner. So we are glad to be coming at you today with a special episode on how to overcome jealousy in your number one human relationship. Tell us what we're going to talk about today, or why are we here, Kim?
Well, we are here to talk about that green-eyed monster jealousy. And I feel like, it's a great subject, and it's alive and well in our lives as well as our relationships. And so, I think that in an ideal world, we would be really happy for other people's successes, and we would be really content, and we would feel in our relationships very secure, and that there was no betrayal. But that just really isn't so. It isn't always that way in relationships.
No, it's not. I wish it was. And jealousy, I've got to be honest, jealousy is not a huge thing in our relationship. We do have a little bit of jealousy in a positive way, and we're going to share more about that with you a little bit later. But jealousy, I'm going to share I want to start a little quote with everybody. Jealousy is that dragon that slays love under the pretense of keeping it alive. That's from Havelock Ellis. So jealousy, we justify because we say it's love. I'm only jealous because I love, when in reality, jealousy is what kills love under a false pretense. And we're going to talk about that today. So hopefully you'll come out with some ideas, some tips of what you can do to minimize the jealousy and only keep the healthy piece alive in your relationship.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that jealousy is a normal human emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have that, and it's okay. But I think we have to be able to keep it in check and understand there are different kinds of jealousy as well. What are some of those kinds of jealousy?
There are a lot. I think the first one is kind of that envious covetousness. Like, in other words, when you're jealous and you look at somebody and you go, I want what they have, meaning, why do they have the good? They shouldn't have it, or they have it, but I want it too. And you're coveting and really wanting somebody else that somebody has. And that's dangerous, because what somebody else has was either earned, created, or meant for them. So it's kind of like wearing somebody else's shoes, right? If I look and say, I want what they have, that goodness, because I'm jealous of it and I got it, it wouldn't fit or be suited for me because it wasn't intended for me. And that's why it's so dangerous when we're envious or covetous, because you're looking and thinking what somebody else has should be yours and not theirs.
Sure.
What's the one that you can think of?
Another one would be, I think, lack of trust, and, really being possessive of someone as well. I think those kind of go hand in hand. And that is, always questioning your partner. Where are you? What are you doing? And that comes from not feeling secure in the relationship. So I think that's another example of jealousy.
Yeah, and that's another one and another thought. Have you ever seen somebody have something good and you go, oh, I wish I could have what they had. I'll never be able, I'll never know how, I'll never be allowed, I'll never figure out. So it's kind of that incapable belief, right? In other words, you're saying, I could never. And if you say those words are powerful. We talk a lot about words in our podcast and at Kick-Ass Couples Nation. And if you say the words, I could never, then it will certainly become kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy where you're right. If you say it and you believe it and you think it, you won't. So then there's that, oh, I wish I could have what they have, because you just don't see yourself as able to do it, or maybe even get there.
Sure. Well, so how do we combat some of these different types of jealousies? How do we create such a strong trust and belief in our relationship, in our significant other, that it sucks all the oxygen from those feelings of jealousy?
Well, I think one of the big things that is the best combatant of jealousy is great communication. If it's open and honest and just truthful. So if you ever think of the over communicating, meaning when someone has told you something so much, you're like, oh my gosh, I get it, right? When it comes to jealousy, it means that you're not necessarily aware of and communicating all the necessary elements about something or someone in your relationship. And I think
Sure.
that a good way to combat that is if you are really communicating well in your number one human relationship, you're eliminating the doubt.
Sure. And I think also it's important. I think one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of jealousy in our relationship is that we do a good job of telling each other and showing each other how much we love each other and how much we appreciate other. And I think that goes a long way to staving off jealousy in a relationship when you're constantly showing each other those things.
Yeah, I mean, if you're reinforcing it, it's not just communicating is part of it, sure, saying the words, oh, not just you can trust me or you shouldn't worry about that, but really demonstrating with your actions why they shouldn't, because you're there for them, you're in tune for them, you're giving them what they need. I think that's huge. And you know, and if there's something that you're aware of that you think could make your partner jealous, or there's something that they're incredibly sensitive to, having open communication and sharing it with them, not hiding it. When your partner discovers something about you, or something that you knew of, or something that you took action on and you didn't communicate it, that's when jealousy comes in. So I think it's being willing to be, vulnerable and open and say, hey, this happened and I got to share it with you because I want you to understand and be on the same page. Even
Sure.
if it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
even if they're going, well, why were you talking to that person? And just say, hey, you know what? This is how it happened. And I just want to be open with you and share so you are aware.
Yeah. And setting those, once you have had that communication and you have been vulnerable with each other, setting those boundaries, talking about, okay, this is what I am comfortable with, and this is what I'm not comfortable with, and this is why.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you got to have boundaries in your relationship. And around jealousy, an easy way to do that is that, Kim and I have talked about in our relationship what things are acceptable or not acceptable with members of the opposite sex. There are females that I work with and they're fantastic individuals, and I work with them, but I'm going to make sure that I don't put myself in a situation with someone I work with one of her friends, or even an acquaintance that would make her uncomfortable. And so let me back up. And, a great example of that is in our relationship. When I would be at church and some of the women that were older, I'd be getting my hugs and I'd come home and I'd have my shoulder full of their makeup, because some older women do wear a lot of makeup and it'd be smeared. She goes, oh, you were hugging on the women again. And, she at one point told me, she goes, you got to be, I'm a touchy feely, open kind of person. And she gave me the advice and said, you got to be careful. First of all, some people don't know what to do with that and they're not comfortable with it. But secondly, you need to limit your contact with other women out of respect for me. There's nothing wrong with being a friend, but certainly kissing somebody else or being, overly expressive with them is not acceptable. And so I learned how to not do something that was going to make her jealous out of respect for her. I can still be loving and attentive and use touch as a way to communicate that, but I will never do it in a way that would make her either feel jealous or uncomfortable because of my action.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Any kind of social circle, community event that you might be attending, I think we have to be really aware of how we connect and talk to other people so as not to let that person think that there might be an opportunity for them to come in.
Yeah.
But also, I think it is, again, out of respect for your partner. And I think we have to be careful about how we talk about people from our past, and in comparing our partner with other people, with relationships we've had in the past. So I think that can be a slippery slope as well.
I would agree. I think, kind of the overarching theme is you don't want to put yourself in a situation that jealousy could be,
Exactly.
you don't want to create a fertile field for that jealousy to grow. And I think, one thing that is an incredible sign that there is an affair in a relationship. People think an affair is adultery, right? An affair is sex. And yes, it can be, but you can have a physical affair, you can have an emotional affair where there is no physical contact, and that doesn't mean it's okay. But when you allow someone from outside your number one relationship know more about any situation that's personal or intimate to you than your partner does, that is the definition of an affair. So if there's someone that knows more about me or a situation than Kim does, that's an affair because I've let them in. I've let them become an outsider, and I'm giving them privy to information that they really shouldn't know. So that's something that you can do to make sure you're not even allowing it to occur.
Yeah. So what are some of the, if we had to talk about some of the root causes, what causes jealousy? Where does jealousy really stem from in a relationship? What would you
Well, I think
what would
that,
you say?
sometimes if one or both partner in the relationship has low self esteem, meaning they don't have a high opinion of themselves. So they're questioning, am I good enough? Right? Can I do enough? Are they going to love me? Do they love me the way I am? If someone's always questioning their own self esteem and they don't think they're good enough, that really is ripe for jealousy because you're comparing, right? You're always thinking, I don't measure up. And when you feel you don't measure up, your concern is that someone else that is going to step in
Right.
and provide more than you can to your partner. I think that's
Yeah.
that's one big one.
I also think just having a high sense of emotion in a really unhealthy way is dangerous, because what happens when we do that? I think that we have to recognize that our feelings aren't always facts, right? So we don't really do we really understand what's going on in the situation? Are we imagining that something is going on? What's really happening? Or are we just letting our emotions take over? So I think that having a good understanding of your own emotional intelligence is huge when it comes to jealousy.
Yeah, emotions is huge. People can be a little neurotic, right? I mean, they can be, oversensitive to something. And we always talk about the idea of don't create a story where it doesn't exist.
That's right.
So, in the absence of information, like, ooh, you think this could happen, or this might be going on, or they said or did something, and here's the reason why, you start to create this false narrative in your head about what's going on. Your partner hasn't done it or said it, but you're taking an action and you're interpreting and being neurotic about it, and you are manufacturing a story of what's going on instead of, like we said earlier, having the communication to determine and say, hey, this happened, and is this why you were feeling, or instead of getting clarification, understanding, you create that. I think you're totally right about that. People, another one is feeling, Kim, possessive of others. No one owns somebody in your relationship. You're not in control, you're not manipulating, and you don't manage and control your partner. So, jealousy is the need of, you feel you've got to control and dictate what they think, say, and do. And that's just suffocating. I mean, if I don't like to be micromanaged, you don't like to be micromanaged, and we've each given each other those conditions and those responses when we feel that way, and it's awkward. So I think jealousy comes into play when we think we have the right, or we feel the need to control somebody in the relationship, and that's never going to have a positive outcome.
I also think there is the feeling of abandonment. Some of us have a real fear that someone is going to leave us, and it could be from something that, triggers us from our history. But I think that that really can have a big influence on jealousy when we feel that we may be abandoned.
Yeah, like we're gonna, if we do or don't do something, then we're gonna be out of the relationship, and so that forces us to act away, to try to prevent that, and it may not being occurring. And abandonment usually comes out of history, right, Kim? I mean, that could come out of your family of origin, how you were raised,
Absolutely.
things that happened to you or things that didn't happen to you, or if you were in a previous relationship. Sometimes you were married for a short time before we got married, and sometimes things after 28 years of marriage will still come out, and you'll go, "Ooh, that reminds me of X, Y, and Z," and ooh. Please, please don't say that, or oh, that's not a happy place for me to go. And those things still come up. I remember the other day I said, wow, I never knew that. I didn't understand that. And so, I mean, she's pulling something from 20 or 29 years ago that I
Yeah.
had no knowledge of, that was invoking a response today. And that abandonment can happen that way. And so if you feel that way in your relationship about something, and if it is abandonment or there's something out of your history, another relationship, or how you were raised, it's really good to have that conversation with your partner and get it out. It may not be easy, but think of it as just another obstacle that you don't have to go over or through or around, and it's going to bring you closer to your partner. So we've kind of walked through
I know.
a
This
bunch
has
of
been
stuff
great.
about jealousy, and I want to tell a story because it was funny in preparing for this segment. I told Kim about this story, and she said, "You know what? I just don't even remember that."
I have
I
no recollection of this even happening. So, but let's hear an example of jealousy in our relationship that I have no remembrance of.
Even when I told her the story, she's like, "I responded that way." So it was interesting. I was in a real estate development company, and had a part-time admin working for me. I needed an admin, and we were using a temp agency, and we'd been through several, and some were longer term than others. And we were having like that holiday Christmas luncheon. And Kim came along with, I think, maybe even one of our kids who were quite young at the time, and everybody's were there, and we're having this lunch, and she met the person. And later she pulled me aside and she said, "I can't believe you have that woman working for you." And I said, "Well, she's, temp agency part-time." And she said, "Matthew, she is a young, good-looking, person, and you are working intimately with her. And out of respect for me, you should be more aware of the person that you're working with, because you wouldn't want to make me feel jealous that you're with this person and they're working with you, and they were single, and it wasn't somebody, I don't even remember her name. It wasn't something I would be somebody I was attracted to, but do remember that she dressed in kind of a provocative, sexy way. And I did ask her to tone that down, but my wife was like, "That's not the kind of person you want working for you." So that was an example. I'm like, "Oh, you're a little jealous about that." And she said, "Well, I don't know if it was so much jealousy, but it was more about, that's not the kind of person you want representing you or working with you on a day-to-day basis, because it is a little disrespectful to her in our relationship." So I didn't know that, and I was made painfully aware of it, of something that I needed to do. So I'd love to know, anybody listening or on today, if you all have any questions about jealousy in your relationship, or how to handle it, or a situation that maybe you faced, or even if you want to share a story of how jealousy popped up in your relationship, we'd love to hear. Throw it in the comments below. Message us, or if you want to email us, you can reach out to us at info@kickasscouplesnation.com. And we'd love to hear from you. And Kim, what else? What are some of the things that, do you think that you have any triggers around jealousy? Are there any things that if they happen that it might get your cackles up and might cause you to feel that?
That it's a great question. You kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. I think having been married once before and having some definite triggers from that. I also was married to someone who was a musician, and was working his way up the ladder as being a very successful musician. And so I think that, going with him to shows and seeing all the girls and the groupies, and I feel like I had some baggage from that, and that I brought to our relationship. And those are my own feelings of insecurity, but that's a really tough life to live, and to see that, and where, your spouse has to engage in that kind of behavior, because that's sort of what keeps the people coming back, right? And so that was really hard for me, and to be able to I think, kind of curb those feelings and those heightened emotions in that relationship, and then starting a new relationship with you, I feel like I did bring a lot of that to the relationship in the beginning. And so those are things that I had to work on, things we had to talk about and
Sure.
kind of work through. And I would say that still to this day, like you said, some of those things every once in a while, I'll feel a little, wow, a little jolted and triggered from that. So, jealousy is real and it's alive, but it's how we let it, if we let it take over us, then it can ruin our relationships. But if we learn how to control it and maintain it and be vulnerable about it and connect with our partner, it's an opportunity to grow and learn.
Yeah, we had a question that come in. It said, "What are some good ways to overcome jealousy in your relationship?" And we talked about a few of those earlier. And I think really, and what Kim was just kind of alluding and referring to, is communication. And it's not an easy conversation, but there's nothing wrong if you're the one in the relationship and you feel jealous, there's nothing wrong with saying to your partner, "Hey, I, I just want to let you know I'm struggling with something," or "When XYZ happens, it makes me feel jealous. And here's why." Not just that it does, but why does it? Is it
Right.
something unresolved, or is it something you're uncomfortable with? If they're doing something that you're just not comfortable with, hey, you're a little handsy with that other guy, and you're putting your hands on him, and I'm the only one that you should be putting your hands on. And so when you do that, it really makes me feel uncomfortable. Is that something that you're willing to be more aware of? Da, 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 da. So I think communication is
Yeah.
huge.
And can we set boundaries here? Can we talk about what some boundaries could be so that we're both comfortable in that situation?
And I think the important thing is, when you're having those discussions, when those things are occurring, is not to diminish, demean, or discount your partner's feelings. If there's something that makes them feel jealous, you can't say, "Oh, don't, that's stupid. You just got to get over that." You can't do that. You got to listen to what they have, take it seriously, and respond out of love and concern. How do
Sure.
you avoid a conflict over this conversation, Kim? How would you avoid a conflict over a conversation about jealousy? If we had to have one, what do you think is key to do to make sure it doesn't turn into a conflict when because if it's a way you feel about something your
You're
partner
entitled
does,
to feel that way.
right, you are entitled to feel that way.
Well, timing about talking about this, I think, is really important. You need to pick a time when you're both feeling good and you need to give each other a heads up. So I think timing is important. I think being really vulnerable about how you feel and why it makes you feel that way is important. And I think, how something is said and received is really important, because that's how you can avoid conflict.
Right.
And so I think it's timing, being vulnerable, and really being open and overly communicating how you feel, and then being able to discuss it in a really calm way. There isn't any reason to have conflict over it. It's an opportunity to grow and to understand each other and to become closer to each other.
And let me give you a framing technique. I kind of want to add that. And no matter the topic, pick any topic. It could be jealousy, it could be anger, it could be lack of
Absolutely.
intimacy or sexual issues, whatever it may be. I think the context to frame any discussion with your partner could be this: "I'd like to have a conversation with you about how we fulfill each other's needs." Or, "I feel we could have a conversation about how we could better fulfill each other's needs." Having a conversation about jealousy is that, for me to feel safe and secure in the relationship, here's what I need. And I also like to say, don't start out with you and your needs. Start out with your partner. So you're having, hey,
What do you need?
what do you want to talk about something? Right. Can you please help me understand what your needs are around fill in the blank? Jealousy, intimacy, better communication, a truer sense of commitment. And
Sure.
then once they share that and you can repeat it back to their satisfaction, you've earned the right to say, "I'd like to share with you what my number one needs or most important needs are around this topic as well." And making sure they hear you, they understand you. Because if you're in love and you're committed to the person that you're in this life journey with, it's all about understanding what their needs are and how you can best support them. And if you don't have that, And it's not this, you can't say, well, I did it last year and, I know what I need to know. It could change daily, hourly, moment by moment, weekly, monthly, or it might be the same for 6 months, right? But if you don't understand what their number one needs are and how you can best support them, it's a conversation worth having, even if it's about jealousy.
I would agree. And I think that if you're able to do this within your relationship, you will have more connectivity and more intimacy in your relationship.
Yeah.
It'll be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you are working to communicate with your partner openly, honestly, timely, making sure they feel cherished, loved, and adored, like no doubt in the relationship, you're, as we said earlier, removing the oxygen that jealousy needs to survive. And if you're out there thinking right now, man, I'm facing some issues with a jealous partner or other issues with your partner, and you're not sure what to do to get off center or make progress, come visit us at matthewphoffman.com. Would love for anybody to sign up for their free relationship assessment call. I'm a relationship coach, and I work with couples and individuals to help them eliminate those pain points and reach their own relationship nirvana. Go to matthewphoffman.com. A pop-up's going to come up, and I would like to talk to you and learn more about you and your relationship and see what we can do to get you to the best life possible.
We are here to help and support, no doubt.
We are. And Kim, where can they listen? If they want to hear more of you and I together, where can they do that?
They can find us at Kick-Ass Couples Podcast.
They can on most podcast platforms. Kim and I drop a new show every Wednesday where we interview couples and talk about people who are masters in relationships and see what we can learn from them. And we do special episodes as well on, we've got one coming up about parenting and how to be better parents and where do your kids reside to have the most healthy and successful relationship. That comes out next week. So make sure you're listening for it. And we'd love to have you connect with us. So we're here every Tuesday live. Kim jumps in once a month to have a special episode with me on our Casey and Nooner. We hope you'll come back, like this, share with your friends, and we only want to leave you with one final thought.
Happily ever after doesn't just happen. It's on purpose.
Thanks for being with us today. We hope you come on back. Bye-bye.